Hey YouTubians, it's Tony here from We Try Anything. Channel likes try anything so you don't have to. Today's video, as you can see from the screen behind me, is the 31 days with the CASIO AW Analog digital watch. Now, what we normally do in these videos, we normally talk about what the watch is like to wear over 30 to 31 days. And this is a watch I've worn during the month of August. So here is the CASIO AW-81 that I've got featured on the screen behind me. And it does have a module number of, I'm just referring to my notes because I will be referring to them throughout this video, 2747. This CASIO is an eBay purchase, and I have reviewed it before, so I won't go through all the features and all the functions. I'll just quickly skim over them just as a reminder, just in case you haven't seen the review video that I'm referring to. So it is the what you can see here, the resin strap version. There is a metallic version as well, or a metal braceleted version of the CASIO AW-81, and you can find that on the likes of Amazon, which I've linked to below. But in the case of the resin one, I did get from eBay, and it does have a few scrapes and scratches, but not much. Comfort wise, it's up there with probably one of the most comfortable watches I've worn. Now, I've said the same of the calculator watch that I reviewed earlier on this year, which is, or did a 30 to 31 day review as a daily drive watch, I think earlier on this year, and I've linked to it in the description box below. But I've got to say, it's up there in terms of comfort. It really is probably one of the most comfortable watches I've worn in recent times. As comfortable as that Casio calculator watch, because that is super comfortable. But this one, it's right up there. It's easy to put on, it's easy to take off. There's no messing about with straps, and it is, you just don't feel it's on your wrist. It really is a great watch to wear. And the other thing to say, it's not a large watch. It's more like an oblongy rectangular watch, in that it's obviously taller than it is wider. Now I'm popping the measurements of this very watch, including the weight in this example, just so you can get an idea of the sizes and obviously the strap lengths, etc. And what I will say, I felt no hand inhibition. It was kind of a watch that I put on and forgot, and it was fantastic for that point. It really was, in terms of comfort and wearability. Easy to wear, and especially with long sleeve tops. Not that I worn many in August, but saying that, this year's weather has not been the best, so there's been some days where it's been quite cool, to say the least. So I have worn a hoodie over a couple of days, and again, the sleeves just glide over. It's got such a nice profile to it. It really is a nice watch to wear. In terms of the design and display, I love the way this watch looks. It really is a great looking watch, and the digital display works really well with the dial that you can see here. And it looks great on the wrist. It really does. Not so much stand out, but it's got a level of retro sophistication to it, in that it's not your usual analog watch. It does have a digital element to it, but the way they've integrated the digital part of the watch into what would be the analog dial, I've got to say, I really do like the way it looks. Now, the only thing I will say about the LCD digital display, it is quite small. I mean, the fonts are fairly legible on this watch, but if you've got slightly deteriorating eyesight, then it may not be the one for you. And also, what I will say, in terms of the actual hands going over certain times during the day, the hands will obscure that digital display. And unfortunately, unlike the what would be the Casio G-Shock GA2100, or what is known as the Casios, where when you press like a combination of buttons, the hands move out the way. They don't on this. It can obscure that LCD display. But again, if you didn't have the LCD display, you wouldn't have the amount of functions that this watch has, which I shall just skim over later on in this video. The one thing is, the Loom is not brilliant. It's good, but it's not brilliant. You can still tell the time in the dark, but it doesn't highlight the numerals or the indices, as you can see on this watch. It's just on the dual handset, or the, the minute and hour hands, really. It's just at the tip. So it does give you an idea what time it is, but you've just got to kind of guess, really. But it does have a backlit display to it as well, which I really like. It's like an amber dual LED setup, which is to the left and to the right of the watch. And I know in the previous review video I did say it does highlight the 9 and the 3, which it does, but it's not brilliant, I've got to be honest with you. It looks really nice, but in terms of the functionality of telling the time, it's not amazing. I mean, you do get a gist of the time, but it's not stunning in terms of how well that backlit display works. Again, I mean, you can kind of decipher the time, but it's not the most intuitive way of doing it, but it does look nice, I've got to admit. In the dark, darkness and semi-darkness, it looks great. But overall, I really do love the look of this watch. I love the coloration of the resin case and the buttons, and also obviously the black contrasting against what would be the silver effect paint that is on the resin case. And as I've mentioned, it is covered by a nice spherical acrylic glass, which will, I've got to be honest with you, which will scratch over time. You can't avoid it, but that's what these watches do. I mean, it's just the nature of the material. But again, overall, I just love the way the design of the watch. But what I will say as well, Casio tend to do a lot of what would be decals on their watches. In this instance, I've got to admit, it's just the only decals they put on is what would be the functions of the watch, or what each of the buttons do. And this watch does have a lot of functionality to it, as well as a few features, which I'm just going to talk about now. So features wise, 50 meters of water resistance, which is brilliant on a little watch like this. It's fantastic. It's got a 10-year battery life, or up to 10 years from obviously when the battery is brand new. And also it's got a calendar that goes on, an automatic calendar, which you can set and forget, that goes up to what would be 2099. And finally, it also has 12 and 24 hours, which can be featured down the bottom with, as you can see, it says DST, so it will incorporate daylight saving time. Functions wise, and I'm just going to have to read through this because there's a fair few to this watch. I mean, for such a small watch, it can do quite a lot. It has a tele memo, which can store up to 30 sets of data with an 8-character name and 16-digit telephone numbers. It has a world time that goes up to what would be 30 cities in which you can cycle through, and 29 time zones. Plus you can turn the daylight saving time on a specific city on or off. 3 independent alarms, one of which includes a snooze alarm. Plus it has an hourly chime, or what would be known as an hourly signal. So the watch will beep on the hour every hour. It has a countdown timer, which has a range from what would be 1 minute up to 24 hours that you can count down from, which again is very handy for a lot of things that you may want to do throughout your day. Very handy indeed. Cooking, I don't know, sporting events or anything like that. It's quite handy for that. And also, talking of sporting events, it also has a stopwatch, and I'm just going to refer to this, that will count up to an elapsed time of 24 hours. My God, I mean, again, another great feature of this watch. Overall, what would I say over my 31 days of wearing it? I've got to say, as I've mentioned, it has been one of the most comfortable watches to wear. And I know it's a cliche of this channel that I love a lot of the Casios that I do feature on this channel. I mean, obviously I've got another Casio, which is the W753, which I'm going to be featuring in September. But over the month I've worn this in August, I've got to say it's been a phenomenal watch. I've loved having it on my wrist. I've loved the look of it. Absolutely love the way this watch looks. And it's probably one of my more favourite Casio analog digital watches that I have featured on the channel and I have got in my collection. I mean, I've got a few, but this one just really does stand out to me in terms of the way it looks, the retro appeal of it, and it's just got a real inoffensive way of telling the time. And I mean like it's not loud or proud like you would get with the G-Shock, but this one, it just tells the time really nicely, and I've got to say it really does look great. As you can imagine, I really do like this watch. And in terms of outfits, obviously it would look well with casual wear and casual attire. And I wouldn't mind wearing this with a suit, to be honest. I mean, okay, it's not blingy or anything like that, but it's understated. It's got a nice classical element with the analog display, well, or the dial as it were, and the digital display just gives it that slight edge on a lot of analog watches that I've got. So I've got to say, what a great looking watch. Time is fairly easy to read using the hands. I didn't have any problem with that, and I probably should have mentioned that earlier in the video, but I read the time. I tended to read the time with the hands than I did with the LCD display, which it's normally the other way around when you've got an analog digital watch, in my experience really. But in this aspect, because the hands were nice and not too thin and not too hidden away on the display, they were quite, not loud and proud, but they were obvious. And I did read the hands on this a lot quicker than I read the digital display. But with the digital display as well, you can change it between what would be time, or in timekeeping mode, in between time or date. And I kept the date function highlighted, and obviously I just used the analog hands for reading the time. It works so well on this watch, and I'm really gutted that I can't wear it to September. But again, I've got the W753 to feature next month. As I say, lots of functions, but a lot of them went over my head over that month. I didn't use really any of them, the alarm or the stopwatch or the countdown or anything like that. But again, if you are a person that needs that and you like something that's a little bit different to the usual digital watches, then the AW-81 is a great choice, I've got to admit. And very easy to live with on a daily basis. And I've got to say, this as well as the W202, which I featured a month or two ago. Probably, I think it was last month. It has been one of my most favourite watches to wear over the 31 days in 2024. Now, it's up there, as I say, with the Casio W202 and obviously some of the more classic, smaller Casios, because I do tend to prefer the smaller Casios that sit on my wrist no problem, that doesn't get in the way. But in this aspect, this watch was just brilliant, I've got to say, and I'm gutted to take it off. And I know, as I say, it's a cliche, this channel, that I don't like taking the Casio watches off that I like, but this one, it really was a bit of a stretch for me to take it off and change it for another watch. So there you go, that's my thoughts on the Casio AW-81. Such a great watch, and if you ever do get the chance to buy one and you like the analog digital look that Casio do on some of these watches, then please consider the AW-81. So putting the watch down, it gets a massive, and I can't say enough, massive thumbs up from me. So I hope my 31 days with the Casio AW-81 did give you some help, and if it did, give the video a like or a thumbs up. Really, it will help the channel. If you want to see more videos coming from the We Try Anything channel, then please click on that subscription button below. And thank you for watching this video. I hope it was of some help to you, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Goodbye.